What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Tuesday, December 3rd edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 8-game NBA slate tonight, NBA Cup games. We have quite a few that matter for teams, so pretty interesting slate to talk about. Not a ton of injury news, especially for an 8-gamer. Knock on wood that we don't get anything unexpected during the show or between now and lock, but not nearly as much injury news to talk about as we had on yesterday's 4-gamer, which is nice. Still, obviously, some stuff that we'll have to get into. I'm going to walk through game by game, taking a look at each of these games on the DraftKings slate, talking about how I, at least right now, would be approaching the large $5 DraftKings tournament. If I'm playing 150 lineups in that, going to take a look at how my exposures would look right now, what I like, what I don't like, and just break down each game. As always, my player exposures here, kind of take them with a grain of salt because a lot of stuff will change between now and lock, typically from an injury standpoint, ownership standpoint, but also today specifically, I was trying out some different things before the show. Don't really like how some of my stuff looks right now. So even more likely than usual that stuff looks different. But as always, I'll talk about each game, outside of players that I'm getting to as well. And just, what I see, what I like from those games. So Stephen Leibowitz said, kind of hate the slate right now. I'm kind of torn. I think that there are some interesting spots as far as like the NBA Cup just giving us games that you should probably be projecting a little bit differently than you otherwise would on a random Tuesday in early December. The value on this slate sucks. You can see, the exposures that I have here at the top, they're not crazy as far as like they're some of the most popular players also, but they are not names that inspire confidence. That is the nice thing about injury news is that you get players that are just clearly underpriced as opposed to trying to like guess the minutes of somebody like Jarris Walker. So it is a pretty ugly slate, I guess, in that regard. But it's I still think a pretty interesting one. So we'll take a look at that. Take a look at each game as always, starting with the Philly and Charlotte game. As always, too, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in chat. And if I have anything to say, I will. Starting on the Philadelphia side, we still do not have Joel Embiid. We do have Kyle Lowry expected back. We have Paul George. So this team is relatively healthy compared to what they have been for most of the season. My assumption on the starting lineup is that you get Tyrese Maxey, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Yabusele. If like Lowry started over Oubre, it wouldn't be shocking, I guess. If he did, I still wouldn't expect a ton of minutes there. You could get McCain back in the starting lineup too. He got benched last game for Oubre though. So that's my guess, but this is one of the first games of the slate. So don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about that. I was just putting it out there because obviously if it is different, then the way that I'm projecting it will look at least a little bit different as well. Tyrese Maxey, the guy I'm getting to the most here, and that makes a ton of sense to me. 11% projected ownership. I'm getting to 15%. He's still only $8,200. And, obviously he has to contend with Paul George now, but still no Joel Embiid. So you're going to have the offense still very heavily running through Tyrese Maxey. And he's playing big minutes. It didn't take very long for his playing time to ramp up. Played 35 minutes in his last game, but that's a game where he did lose a few minutes to garbage time. The game before that, he got like 40 minutes, I think, off the top of my head. And this is somebody that historically has played massive minutes when he's healthy. 45 minutes 2 games ago, 5 were in overtime. So 40, give or take, in regulation. I projected 38 minutes here. That is one of the higher minute projections I have for anybody on this slate that is not in a meaningful NBA Cup game. And it's just, this game has like a 5-point spread. It's likely to be relatively competitive. And Tyrese Maxey, when he's healthy, just plays a ton of minutes. So at 8,200, I do still think there is some upside there and modest ownership coming into him. Paul George, 7,500. Getting the 5% of him. He is kind of interesting to me from a playing time standpoint, just because I think there is a possibility that he plays a little bit more than the industry is projecting him to here. In Philadelphia's last game, which was against Detroit a couple of days ago, Paul George played 26 minutes, but that game was a non-competitive game. It was a blowout. And he had some foul trouble in the first half. He picked up 1 foul in the first quarter, subbed in with 9.5 minutes to go in the second quarter after playing about 8 minutes in the first quarter, picks up 2 fouls, subs out on his third total, so second of the quarter, leaves 4.5 minutes on the table there. if he just played his normal first quarter rotation and then played start to finish from when he subbed in the second quarter, you would have been looking at about 17 and a half minutes in the first half. So I didn't project him for 34 or 35 minutes yet because, he has been dealing with injuries all year long and we haven't seen that yet. But I did go to 32. And I do think that if I remember correctly, stuff I saw from the industry in general was closer to 30. So as you can see, it's still not making me take a huge stand on him, but I do think that maybe there is a little bit more minutes upside on Paul George tonight than he's getting credit for. And then Yabusele, if you get to him a little bit, assuming he's starting, that's fine. 5,700, power forward eligible is nice. I wouldn't want him really if he was center only. Probably playing 30 plus minutes, but I was cautious with the minutes projection here because we did see in the last game, not only did Bona get backup center minutes after Drummond got hurt, but they did have a nice stretch in the second half where they just didn't play. They went small. So knowing that they will do that keeps me from going, mid 30s on Yabusele. So 30, I think, is reasonable. He certainly could play a couple minutes more, but that price is getting pretty expensive for somebody that isn't a high usage guy. You have Maxey, you have George dominating touches here. Kelly Oubre, same kind of thing at 5,300. If he starts, probably playing 30 to 32 minutes, somewhere in that range. If he comes off the bench, probably playing a little bit less. At that price, there is some upside, but there's no shortage of good mid-range and pay-up plays on this slate. It's more a matter of trying to find guys like sub 4K or sub 5K that you can click on with any confidence at all. And so Oubre at 5,300 just isn't really going to stand out. Not really showing up too much for me. This game also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but this game doesn't matter from an NBA Cup standpoint. So it is nice because it has a relatively tight spread, but NBA Cup-wise, irrelevant. Caleb Martin getting like 3% ownership at 4,700. Take it or leave it. I don't have any, but nothing really interesting to say there. On the Charlotte side, still no LaMelo Ball. Still, obviously, no Grant Williams. He's out for the year. Still no Miles Bridges. Still no Trey Mann. Mark Williams is questionable. If he's back, I don't think that changes a ton. My best guess, at least for right now, is that you get a 3-center rotation, but it's a center rotation that's dominated by Nick Richards. And then it's like Mark Williams plays, 14 minutes and Diabate plays like 8. So the way I projected it is 26 minutes to Richards, 14 to Williams, 8 to Diabate. If Williams is out, I would go 26 Richards, 22 Diabate, most likely. That's what we got last game with Richards coming off the bench. I don't know if he'll move into the starting lineup tonight or not, but I do think, obviously I would feel better about his minutes if he starts, but I think Richards typically is going to play more minutes than Diabate one way or the other. Even at a 26-minute projection, though, I didn't get to much of him at 5,600, only 3% owned, so kind of surprised I didn't get any because, like, Jonas Valanciunas at 5,200 is getting, 50% ownership or something as a 16-point underdog in Cleveland. Richards is certainly like a logical pivot if you want a center in that price range that isn't 50% owned or 40% owned Joval. So that would make some sense, but still not something that I'm getting to. All I'm really getting to here is 3 guys, but I am getting to them pretty heavily, and so is the field. Micic, 57% projected ownership at 4,500. He's been starting for LaMelo. He's been playing north of 30 minutes. He's still very inexpensive, especially, as I've mentioned already, on a slate that doesn't have a lot of sub 5K value. So he's just looking good, even though he is going to be really popular. Solon here at 47% ownership. I'm getting to 23%. The price tag is just still really low at 3,800, but the playing time is volatile. We kind of got misled, I think, in these first couple of starts that he had after Grant Williams got hurt, where he just went out there and played a ton of minutes. He's not a very good point per minute guy anyway, so he is somebody that, for him to put up a score that you really want in tournaments, he needs to play a ton of minutes or really just have an outlier game. He did both of those things in his second start when he 10x'd. But we did see last game what I had kind of expected to happen. He played 22 minutes. You got 26 from Caleb Martin, whereas he had only been playing 22 or 23. Josh Green played 36 minutes instead of 29 in that one. You had Nick Smith in the rotation for 17 minutes. You had KJ Simpson for 14. So I projected 28 minutes for Solon here. I think that the playing time really varies, or the range rather, really just varies from 22 to 36, kind of depending on how he's playing, how the rotations, look exactly. But I am a little pessimistic on his playing time just because what we saw last game with the 22 minutes was kind of in line with my expectations for how this rotation would go without Grant Williams. Not that I think he always plays 22 or anything, but that Martin would be more involved than he had been, that Josh Green would start playing more minutes. So I am getting to him just because he's sub 4K and he's I assume starting, which just kind of makes him playable on this slate. But that's a lot of ownership coming to somebody that produces like 0.65, 0.7 fantasy points per minute and isn't guaranteed to play huge minutes either. Brandon Miller, 30% projected ownership. I got to 23%. Projected him for 38 minutes, so he's up there with Maxey as far as non-NBA Cup relevant guys that I'm still projecting for 38 minutes. He's playing a ton. He's a pretty good, he's around a fantasy point per minute guy, but the salary is getting expensive, and you just have a lot of guys in this price range that are going to look pretty good. So I'm getting to a good amount of Brandon Miller, not going too crazy on him, but I do think that, 20 to 30% ownership makes sense on Miller. Now we have the Bucks taking on the Pistons in a game that does matter. Both of these teams need to win for their NBA Cup group. I expect this to be an appealing DFS game, or at least I should say it's an appealing game to project minutes for. Obviously, salary still dictates how much of this game you're going to get to, and you can see on the screen that I'm not getting to much Milwaukee, and neither is the field. But I did project minutes pretty heavily here. Went 37 minutes to Giannis. Normally, I'm projecting 35, 36 minutes to him. I went 39 to Dame after he played 40 minutes in a irrelevant game against Washington last time out. Normally, projecting 37, 38 minutes to him. So I went a little bit heavier there. Still didn't get me much of them. Got me to 3% Dame, got me to 1% Giannis. This really has to do not even with these players. It has to do with the value on the slate. It's really, really difficult on this slate to pay $12,000 for Giannis, no matter how many minutes you project him for, because there's not a lot of cheap, good plays to get to. Same goes for Dame at 9,500 when you have plenty of guards that you can play for less. So even at those healthy minute projections, I didn't really get much here. And if value does open up somewhere unexpectedly, then I would like to get to more bucks, because this is a game that not only has a close spread, but it's a game that matters for them. But it's just still really difficult to get to their salaries. On the other side for Detroit, we have Cade Cunningham, not on the injury report. I guess at this point, the other day, he wasn't on the injury report either, but I assume he's going to play, going to return. We don't have anybody relevant on the injury report for the Pistons. So overall, that makes them a pretty unappealing team too. Even though you're projecting this game to be one that they care about and that they want to win, you have as deep a rotation as they've had all season long. Cade Cunningham getting 3% ownership at 9,700. Tim Hardaway getting 1% at 4K. Nobody else on this team getting ownership at all. I'm not getting to them either. It's just a function of how deep the rotation is and pricing. I went 36 minutes on Cade Cunningham, which is about as aggressive, I think, as you could go, given the fact he's missed 4 out of their last 5 games with a hip injury, and he just still doesn't show up at that price. It's just tough. Like Tobias Harris probably plays around 30 minutes here because of the team being healthy, whereas earlier in the season, you were getting 35 minutes in competitive games. So it just makes it really tough to get to the Pistons. Next, we have the Wizards taking on the Cavs in Cleveland, a game that has no NBA Cup impact, a game where the Cavs are massive, like 16-point favorites here. The Wizards are terrible. The Cavs are really good. I would really like to be getting less Joval, but I also understand why I'm getting to him and why the field is getting to him. He's a very good point per minute guy. He started the last game. So all of this is with the assumption that Joval starts. I think that he will. He started the last game against the Bucks. That's a front court where you have Brook Lopez and you have Giannis. You have a very similar front court here in Cleveland with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. So with no Kyle Kuzma, my expectation is that Sarr starts next to Joval, and that basically if this game is competitive, and by competitive, I mean, stays within like 15 points and you have starters playing into, deep into the fourth quarter. Joval looks really, really good at 5,200. Like he's a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. He played 30 minutes in that start against Milwaukee. I projected 26 here, trying to account somewhat for the blowout potential and just volatility in minutes. But it just still makes him look really good at 5,200. The problem here, and the reason that I'm concerned about how much I'm getting to, is that 26 is kind of like your average projection here, where sometimes Joval's going to play 30, sometimes he's going to play 22, and it kind of evens out to 26. But 26 isn't a super likely number for him to actually land on. And if he plays 22 minutes, you're probably screwed. And if he plays 30, you probably really want him. It's probably a little bit more likely he plays 22 than 30, just given, again, how much better than the Wizards the Cavs are. But there is massive blowout risk here, and he's popular. Like, if the field were projected to not want to play him because of the blowout risk, then I would love getting to a lot of him and just hoping that it breaks in my favor. Getting him at this much ownership, I don't love it. But again, it's just, not knowing exactly where else to go. I will try and point out other potential pivots that I'm, at least right now, not getting to, but that you could make the case for. I mentioned Nick Richards on Charlotte. Josh Gillum said Gafford or Lively. I think either of them, depending on Lively status, are fine pivots. Like, there's going to be other guys in this range you can pivot to. But right now, I'm getting a lot of Joval. I don't like it. It scares me. But at the same time, like, it's not difficult to see him putting up a game at 5,200 that you need to have. I do also like that, he's not completely dependent on scoring around the rim. He hasn't been shooting a lot of threes this year, only averaging like 0.4 3-point attempts per game. But going back to, last year, averaged over 2 threes per game. He can pull the Cleveland bigs out of the paint a little bit. So, mitigates the rim protection somewhat. I am getting the SAR here at 9% ownership as well, 5,400. I got to 13%. I do think he's a really good play if you're playing a lot of Joval, because if Joval has the big game where he does play 28, 30 minutes and it's relatively competitive, you're probably also getting a lot of minutes from SAR. He played 36 minutes last game. They didn't really add Marvin Bagley to the rotation. He played like 5 minutes in the first half, didn't play in the second half outside of garbage time. So you were getting SAR as your backup center in addition to being your starting power forward. He'd been playing more minutes in general lately anyway, seeing games where he's playing 30 to 32 minutes. He got up to 36 in that game against Milwaukee. I only projected 30 here, still got me a little bit over the field. So I do think that there is some positive correlation between Valanciunas and SAR in that if this game stays competitive, they're both underpriced. And if this game blows out, then they both probably suck. But that is something I wanted to point out. I do like SAR as a low tournament play. He is actually somebody you could use as a pivot from Joval also. Again, not that I think that they're negatively correlated, but SAR could just beat Joval in any given game also. So he is an option there as well. Getting to a little bit of Jordan Poole, less than the field at 6,900, tough matchup, all of that. But he is pretty cheap. And again, if this game does stay competitive, you're probably getting a $6,900 Jordan Poole playing pretty well. No Kyle Kuzma, so the offense really should be running through Poole here. Corey Kispert showing up a little bit at 4,500. I'm not getting to anything else. Fields getting to a little bit of Brogdon. He did play 30 minutes against the Bucks. He is 5,900. I projected 26 here. Again, just kind of trying to account for, one, the blowout, and two, the Wizards not having the most consistent rotations because they're a dog shit team and they're not going to win games. It doesn't matter. Jorge said, doesn't look great. Wizards on something given blowout risk and how great defensive Cleveland is. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and it's why I'm concerned about them. The thing that is driving it is the salaries. Like, you have to keep in mind that everything revolves around pricing. And if Joval was like 7K, then yeah, you're going to pretty easily ignore him outside of, just talking about how high his ceiling is, because the matchup sucks and there's blowout risk. But Joval at 5,200, if there were no blowout risk, would just be the easiest play on the slate. And Joval at 5,200, if the Cavs weren't a good defense and there weren't blowout risk, would be the easiest play on the slate. So it's still just that he's really, really cheap. But there is, added risk just because of the spread and the ownership. On the other side for Cleveland, I think this is kind of an interesting team also. I am getting to Evan Mobley in particular at 7,800, which is kind of, I don't know why he's the one that's just like standing out. But he's projected for 11% ownership. Power forward is generally a little bit weaker than your guard spots and your center spots. So maybe that's driving it a little bit. But this is a spot where I took, a couple minutes off of how I would typically project Cleveland guys because of the spread, but they are the team that's favored by 16. If this game is such a blowout that they lose substantial minutes, somebody is probably doing well because, they are up by 1 million. You could make the case that Cleveland's offense doesn't actually have to do that well. They just keep Washington from scoring and they blow them out that way, which could happen. But generally, I do find it interesting to get to relatively low-owned players on the teams that are big favorites because the field treats them like kind of equally to the underdog in a lot of cases. In this case, they are getting to the Washington side kind of more. But I do like Mobley here. I think you can make the upside case for Mitchell or Garland, though they are a bit more expensive than I would like. Jared Allen's getting some ownership at 6,600. Good price tag, good spot. I'm not getting much of him right now, but I would like to get more. I do think it's a good spot for him. I do like him, even though he's not really showing up in lineups. Going on to the next game, Indiana at Toronto. Close spread in this one. No NBA Cup ramifications, but we do have a close spread here. And Indiana has Andrew Nembhard, who is questionable, but as far as I've seen, expected to play. He started last game, played 15 minutes. They limited 15 minutes in the first half. They didn't play him in the second half. I gave him 20 minutes here. I don't know what the actual number is, but he's in the rotation. I don't think he's playing enough minutes to really matter. The interesting thing from Indiana's rotation last game, though, there were a couple interesting things. One, Moses Brown did not play regular rotation minutes, period. So that experiment seems like maybe it's over. And two, Quentin Jackson and Johnny Furphy each played like 5-6 minutes. So combined, they played like a 12-minute rotation. I don't know for sure that Indiana continues doing that, but the impact was that Obi Toppin played a bit more than he has been typically because he was getting all the backup center minutes without Moses Brown, and then also getting some minutes, minutes backing up Pascal Siakam at the 4. So that's a benefit for him. And then it also meant more minutes for Jarris Walker because instead of like splitting this pie of minutes with Furphy and Jackson, it basically just all went to Jarris Walker, who I have projected for 24 minutes here at 3,900. So I'm getting to a lot of Jarris Walker. I'm getting to a lot of Obi Toppin. They're getting ownership. I'm higher than the field. They are risky. Like Indiana could just change their rotation again and Jarris Walker plays 20 minutes and Obi Toppin plays 16 and I'm screwed. But on a slate where there's not a lot of value that I like right now that looks good, these two are at least guys that produce fantasy points at a decent rate. They're in a good matchup against Toronto. I do also like that, Toronto does have a lot of, the Chris Boucher, Magba type like fours, as opposed to like true backup centers. It makes me think that it's likely that they do go with that top in rotation again. And then, on the wings, hopefully they just give Jarris Walker a bunch of minutes again, because he's, similarly sized to a lot of different pieces on the Raptors. So that's my hope here. It's my expectation. But again, I do think that there is a lot of volatility here. I'm getting to a little bit of TJ McConnell. 12%. He's projected for 5%. Again, this is just lack of 5K options. And if TJ McConnell plays 22 minutes, he does have a ceiling, especially against a Toronto offense or Toronto team that, isn't very good defensively. Hopefully he can get some turnovers, all of that. Miles Turner at 6,700 at center, 34 minutes, reasonable expectation for him, especially again with Moses Brown not seemingly in the rotation anymore. That is a benefit for Miles Turner if he's out of the rotation. And then the actual pieces here, the good pieces, Turner, Siakam, Halliburton, Mathurin, getting to them, here and there, but nothing that stands out as a priority. It's the value pieces here that I think are very risky, but that at least right now I am getting quite a bit of. Bankroll said, sorry to backtrack. What was your projection on Adam Bona? I gave him like 12 or 13 minutes. I don't think that you get 48 minutes combined from Yabusele and Bona based on how they handled the second half last game. I projected them for 42 minutes combined, and then I projected whoever you want to call, KJ Martin, Caleb Martin, whoever you want to call the small ball 5 there, to get like 6 minutes. So it wasn't enough to be getting him into lineups. On the Toronto side, Grady Dick is questionable. This is one of the bigger Q tags that we have. I projected him in for now. If he's out, you probably get Jacoby Walter still in the starting lineup. He is 4K, so you probably get quite a bit of ownership coming into Jacoby Walter if Grady Dick is out and Walter is starting, just because there's not a lot else to like. In the last game against Miami, Walter started. He only played 17 minutes. The game before that, he had played like 26. So if he does start, there is still that volatility as far as how many minutes is he going to play, but I'll take that on this slate. Obviously ownership dependent. If he's like 60% owned or something, I'll find some other stuff, but he would look like a value if Dick is out. I have Dick projected in right now, which just kind of keeps us to these main pieces on the Raptors, but getting a lot of them. Scotty Barnes showing up a ton for the field and for me. 8,300 in a nice spot here. 117 team total for the Raptors. I went 35 minutes on Barnes, even though this game doesn't matter. He's still just been playing big minutes. He's a very, very good point per minute guy. Has been ever since he got into the NBA. So I'm a little surprised that the ownership is as high as it is, given that there are always other good $8,300, 8K plays. But the fact that I'm getting the 50% at that ownership makes me think that he just looks really good also. I think the point guard and small forward eligibility has a lot to do with it as well. It just makes it so no matter what else you're doing with your lineup, you can fit him in really easily. So far this season, 310 minutes played for Barnes, 1.36 DraftKings points per minute, just about a 30% usage rate, 34.5% assist percentage. So he's going to look really, really good here. RJ Barrett, 27% for me, 25 for the field, 7,900, probably playing around 36 minutes. I like getting to him. And then I like getting to Jakob Poeltl here at 7,200, about 2x the field. So he does stand out as a play that looks pretty good. I went 33 minutes. He could conceivably play more. He is somebody that I think if Grady Dick is out actually benefits. And it's not somebody that I think people are going to necessarily look to if Grady Dick is out. But like I said, this is with Grady Dick projected in. I'm still getting to Poeltl. But the reason that I think he could benefit a little bit if Grady Dick is out is just that I think you could project an extra minute or two possibly, because I don't think the Raptors are really going to add or subtract people from their rotation. I didn't project any minutes for Shed, but he only played like 4 minutes last game anyway. So if you take Grady Dick out, I think what probably happens is that like maybe Mogbo plays a little bit more, maybe Boucher plays a little bit more, Walter probably plays a bit more, Battle plays a bit more than I have projected right now. But I think you actually probably get Poeltl playing a few minutes more as well, or a couple minutes more as well. Also possibly an extra minute or two to guys like Barnes and Barrett. So that is something that I think, to keep in mind, like, because he's not getting a ton of ownership, and I don't think the field probably adjusts in that way where if the Grady Dick minutes open up, they think to give an extra minute or two to Poeltl. But I do think that he probably would get it. So that's something to keep in mind, but I like him one way or the other here. Nice spot for him. Before we move on to the Knicks and the Magic, reminder to sign up for Endgame Syndicate using the link in the description below. That is the site that I started with Uticow, Brick75, and Nerdy Tenor. Our goal over there is to help you just win more sustainably in DFS, help you be a little bit less reliant on tools, on, industry tools and subscriptions to a bunch of different sites and all of that, helping you kind of maximize your skill set. However you approach DFS, we all approach it in different ways. There's somebody there that has had success playing the way that you want to play or think you should play, whatever whatever it may be. And so our goal is to kind of just help you maximize all of that. So check that out. We have videos up on the site, just talking about a lot of different strategy things. We have a Discord where we're talking strategy in there. Also just a lot of really good players in that Discord in general, and then monthly roundtables as well. We will have one coming up shortly where the four of us answer your questions, whatever they may be about DFS. The four of us, take our shot at answering those and giving you feedback on whatever you have to talk about. So check that out. Link is in the description below. Now moving on to the Knicks and Magic. Chill Fate said shots fired. I don't know if that was what I said about industry stuff. That wasn't a knock on industry tools. Like, as you can see, I am reliant on them as well. I use SaberSim very heavily, but it's expensive and subscription membership fees to a bunch of different sites add up. So, the more that you can do on your own, even if you're not a really good programmer or data scientist or whatever, which I'm not, the more you can do on your own, or the more that you can do with like just one tool and get it to do things that you want, it's going to save you money from subscribing to a bunch of different sites. So that wasn't a shot at anyone. Jorge asked if there's discount code for sign up. There is not right now, but the link to sign up is in the description. Orlando taking on the Knicks. This is a game that matters. Both of these teams need to win. If Orlando loses, they still have a good chance at advancing. The Knicks do not. So, it matters a little bit more for the Knicks, but I expect both of these teams to be playing heavy minutes, trying to win, and it does create some interesting plays here. Wendell Carter Jr., I like a lot. $5,100 price tag, only projected for 4% ownership. The Magic haven't really been that cautious with his playing time, and they actually they've been starting him alongside Goga, which is really good for how you can project the Magic front court. My guess when he came back was that you were going to get a really, really gross 3-man center rotation between the three of them. And Carter would eventually become the starter, but it would be really, really gross for a little bit. But the fact that they're starting him alongside Goga makes it so that you can project healthy minutes to particularly Carter and Goga. But since he returned, when Carter first came back, they said that they were limiting him to, I think it was like 14 to 16 minutes. Naturally, they played him 18. Then he played 26. Then he played 28 in his most recent game. They really didn't waste any time in ramping him up. Like I said, played 28 in that last game against Brooklyn. He also had some foul trouble in the first half, picked up 2 fouls in the first quarter, picked up his 3rd foul in the second quarter, and left with 4.5 minutes left in the half. Now, I don't know, like he subbed in earlier in the fourth quarter than he did in the second quarter. So it is possible that he was just going to get to 28 minutes regardless. But I think projecting 30 minutes here is very reasonable. I think he could play more, possibly. You know, we saw this with Porzingis the other day. I made a bunch of mistakes on that slate, and so it went poorly. But one thing that I was right on was that Boston was kind of, they were kind of, the way they were handling Porzingis reminded me of how Orlando seems to be handling Carter, where I looked at it and it was just like, you know, yeah, maybe they keep adding on 2 minutes at a time, but they also might just let him go. And he ended up playing, I think, like 32 minutes or something like that. I'm not saying that I think Carter plays 32. I wouldn't be shocked if he did. Projecting 30 seems fine to me. I like that he's not getting ownership. I like that you can play him at power forward. I'm like 4 or 5x the field on him right now. I think he looks like a really good play. Jalen Suggs, 6% projected ownership at 6,400. He was in massive foul trouble last game as well. So be careful reading into recent minutes for Suggs. Orlando is actually a really difficult team in general to project because they've been in a lot of blowouts recently, or at least non-competitive games, not like massive blowouts necessarily, but games where you didn't see exactly how they were going to close or how many minutes guys were going to play. And then they're also getting guys back from a health standpoint. So it is kind of a guessing game here, but I do think that Suggs likely plays north of 30 minutes here as long as he avoids foul trouble. I'm getting to him a little bit. Goga, 5,300. I got to 5%. I went 28 minutes. If you wanted to go 30, I think it's fine. I do think he's another guy that is a perfectly reasonable pivot to Joval. He's not the same point per minute guy. This is the other, part of the equation that you have to keep in mind. Like Goga's minutes, I think, are safer than Joval's given the importance of the game, given the spread, all of that. But whereas Joval's like a 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy this year, Goga is a 1.09 fantasy point per minute guy. So the minutes for the two of them aren't exactly equal, but Goga is still a good point per minute guy. And he is somebody that, is capable of playing 30 plus minutes here, played 32 in Orlando's last game. I might actually end up getting to 30 on him and then just taking 2 minutes away from somebody else. KCP probably playing around 33, 34 minutes at 4,300. I'm not getting much, but certainly as like a last guy in, I think that's fine. Franz Wagner's tough to get to at 9,600 because of the lack of value everywhere else. I think that in general, he starts kind of living in the like 36, 37 minute range. In this particular game, I did go to 38, but still didn't get me to him. So Carter, to me, I think is the most interesting play on Orlando because I do like that power forward eligibility and the field's not getting to him. I do think Goga is a very natural Joval pivot as well. On the other side for the Knicks, I expect a lot of minutes here. They have gotten relatively expensive, and so it is keeping me from getting to them too much. But in their last NBA Cup game, they basically ran a 7-man rotation using 8 bodies. What I mean by that is that they played 8 guys, but Cam Payne played 11 minutes, and Jericho Sims played like 8. The only guys who played real minutes that weren't just straight backups, like Cam Payne just played the minutes that Jalen Brunson didn't play in their last NBA Cup game, and Jericho Sims played the minutes that Karl Anthony Towns didn't play. The only guys that had like actual roles outside of just being a straight backup were the starting 5 plus Miles McBride. And so I think you can project them for a ton of minutes here in a game that has a close spread and that they need to win. This is a Tibbs coach team. Like, projecting heavy minutes for the Knicks makes me, I'm very comfortable doing it. I went 38 minutes on Towns, 37 on Brunson, 40 on Hart, 39 on Anunoby, 38 on Bridges, 26 to McBride, and then I just gave the backup minutes to the guys that they go to. So I'm getting the Towns here at center, 9,200, Fields at 10%, I'm at 20. It's a relatively expensive price tag, but I think 38 to 40 minutes from Karl-Anthony Towns are on the table, as long as he, avoids foul trouble, injury, stupid shit like that. Jalen Brunson also 8,500. So not the most appealing price tag, but his playing time has in general creeped up recently. He had kind of been lagging behind the other guys as far as playing time goes early on in the season, but we have seen that creep up. I went 37 minutes on him, got to 15%. I didn't get to much heart at 6,700 despite projecting 40 minutes. That seems ridiculous to say, but is what it is. Fields getting to 7%. I do think he's a good play. I think Bridges at 5,900, Anunoby at 6,400. I think they're all perfectly fine plays at low ownership, just given how much I expect them to play, but they still didn't really show up much or at all for me right now. But I do like Towns as a contrarian piece at the very least. Definitely a team that I expect very, very, very heavy minutes for, though. Utah taking on Oklahoma City. This one is a weird one. OKC, massive favorite here. They need to win, but point differential also matters. I bet OKC minus 13.5 earlier in the day. This is one where OKC should just, foot on the gas all the way through, win by as many points as they can. For the Utah side, that doesn't really do anything for you. I do think you could make the case that maybe young guys like Keontae George play like normal minutes, kind of regardless of the score, just because there is some value to Utah. Like, let's say OKC's up by 25 in the fourth quarter, but they still have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander out there. There is still some merit to just letting your young guard go play against, play what are still technically competitive minutes against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and a really good OKC team. I don't know if that ends up being the case or not. I assume guys like Markkanen and Collins probably are at a little bit more minutes risk than somebody like George if you're going down that route. But either way, I'm not really getting too much of Utah. The field's not getting too much of Utah. Bryce Sensabaugh at 3,700 is the guy I'm getting to the most. He's showing up 5% of the time. Maybe get some garbage run, maybe just get some normal run. His playing time's certainly been volatile, but not a lot to talk about on the Utah side that's going to look good. On the Oklahoma City side, I do obviously like the fact that I think they're just going to try and run up the score. Cason Wallace, 4,300, getting 10% ownership. I got to 23%. I'm a little surprised he's not getting more ownership, just given the lack of value on the slate. He's certainly not the best point per minute guy, but he has been starting for OKC, and he has been playing real minutes too. Obviously, Mark Daigneault's not shy about yanking starters around, sometimes starting a different guy in the second half. Being a starter, being the fifth starter for OKC does not guarantee you big minutes. But in the last 3 games for Wallace, 33, 31, 36 minutes. I projected 30 here. I think that's very reasonable. If you wanted to go to like 28, I think that would be fine, but I have a hard time going lower than that. And just based on the playing time he's been getting recently, I think 30 is reasonable. So even though he's not the best point per minute guy, I do like getting to him still. 0.72 DraftKings points per minute. Very cheap price tag. Hopefully plays 30 plus minutes. SGA, I'm right in line with the field. Really expensive at 10-3, but I projected him for basically a full workload just because, again, of the fact that I think OKC is going to just be gunning throughout this game. I think that I went with the full 36 minutes too, because there's kind of different ways this could play out that are really, really difficult to quantify. He could still just play like 33 minutes, but you could get a situation where like OKC is up by 25 in the fourth, and they're just going, SGA is just going down and getting shots up as quickly as possible. So like, even though he doesn't play 36 minutes, he gets possessions like it's 36 minutes, or he could just play the whole game. I think that projecting him for the full workload here basically just kind of covers all the different ways that OKC runs up the score on Utah, and that SGA is involved in that. So I do think he looks good as long as you can find ways to get to that salary. Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, Hartenstein, all showing up a little bit. Hartenstein's getting a ton of ownership at 19%. I went 32 minutes. He could play more. We saw 37 a couple games ago, but played like 30 last game in a competitive game. I didn't want to go too high on his playing time. He's a good play. Just not showing up for me, really. I think probably in part because of getting to Towns at a more expensive price tag. And then also the fact that I have so much Joval. That's, Joval right now is taking away a center spot in almost every lineup. If that changes, which again, I'm kind of hoping it does, I'll be able to get to more like Jared Allen and Hartenstein and guys like that. Memphis taking on Dallas. Memphis is healthy, which is a nightmare for DFS. I didn't project anybody on this team above 30 minutes. They just haven't shown a willingness to really do that. I went to 30 minutes on Jaren Jackson. I went to 30 minutes on Desmond Bane. I went to 29 minutes on John Morant. I went like 24, 25 on basically the rest of the team. Exaggerating a little bit, but not that much. The field's getting to Brandon Clark a little bit at 4,400. Power forward eligible, so I do think that's perfectly fine. His playing time's been up a bit lately. Jay Huff isn't in the he's in the rotation, but last game only played in the first half. Didn't play in the second half. I projected them to do that again. I don't know if they will or not, but bodies need to start dropping off somewhere in this rotation, you would think, and that seems like the most logical place when you have Clark and Jackson. So if you want to play Clark as a value play, I think that's fine. Same goes for a $4,100 Jalen Wells or a $4,800 Marcus Smart. I personally don't have much of them right now, but these are also guys where like the less Joe Val I'm playing, the more of these guys I'll probably need to start playing too. So I think they're fine as like last guy in type value plays. If you want to get to some John Morant, okay, but like there's just so many guys north of 8K. There's no denying that Morant can like score 55 fantasy points in 30 minutes. I think he's already done it this year, but like Tyrese Maxey's not getting a lot of ownership at a similar price or even a cheaper price, and he's going to play like 38 minutes. There's a real chance Tyrese Maxey plays 10 minutes more than John Morant tonight and isn't super popular. So like just examples like that explain why it's tough to get to Morant. Same goes for Bane at 7,300. Really the same goes for Jackson at 7,700. So as usual, when they're healthy, Memphis for the most part just looks like a pretty unappealing team. Dallas on the other side here, we do have two pretty big Q tags. Klay Thompson questionable and Derek Lively questionable. If Lively is out, you are likely to get Daniel Gafford as the starting center. He played 27 minutes last game without Lively, and at 5,900, he would look like a pretty good play here. If Lively is in, I projected Gafford for 22 minutes, which doesn't get me to him at 5,900. So this is a spot where I'd be looking to late swap what I can to Gafford if and when we get Lively ruled out. Thompson, 5,400. I projected for 26 minutes. Didn't get him into lineups. Najee Marshall is out. So if Thompson ends up being out, you probably do once again get increased playing time for Spencer Dinwiddie / Jaden Hardy. Dinwiddie has been the guy that they've preferred going to over Hardy so far. From a minute standpoint, Hardy has been the guy that they start more often, but I think that Dinwiddie probably plays more minutes. If Thompson's in, I don't think getting to either of them, either Dinwiddie or Hardy, is really viable. Quentin Grimes is up to 5,300. If he starts in place of Thompson, then I think that you could take some shots at him, but he's still relatively expensive. If Thompson is in, I assume Grimes is going back to the bench. So the only guys that I'm getting to right now with the Q tags projected in are Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Dallas does need to win this game, and I do think it's advantageous for them to win. Actually, no, I don't think point differential matters for them. They already have a nice lead there, but they do need the win. I projected 38 minutes for Luka. He played 36 in his first game back from injury, and so I just think it's kind of full go for Luka. He's 11K, so relatively tough to get to, but that's still $1,000 less than Giannis, showing up 17% of the time for me. And then Kyrie at 9K, 36 minutes, got him into a couple lineups, but nothing crazy. Luka's the only piece that is really showing up for me from the Mavs. And then finally, wrapping things up with the Spurs and Phoenix. Somebody earlier, Power, had asked what my projection was for Sohan. I went 28 minutes, or 26 or 28 minutes. 26 minutes. I was guessing. It was a thumb injury, so he should be like conditioned, I would think. But you also just have kind of a messy wing rotation for the Spurs. I don't necessarily think that Sohan is just like jumping ahead of Harrison Barnes or jumping ahead of Castle or taking like all the minutes from Champagnie or anything like that. So I kind of just projected all of that group. Like I went 28 minutes Barnes, 26 Vassell, 26 Keldon, 26 Sohan, 24 Champagnie. If Champagnie starts, I will end up going to 28 on him and cutting Sohan to like 22. But this was kind of just me guessing at things that I don't really are going to matter too much on the slate, because I don't think I'm going to end up getting to like Champagnie or Sohan anyway, especially on DraftKings. Sohan is a $6,300 center. I don't know how that position happened. I don't know how that salary happened. The position being the more confusing of the two, but like there's no way I'm playing Sohan on DraftKings anyway. Champagnie, I guess if he's starting, you could make some case for taking a shot at him, but I don't think it matters too much. The pieces that I am interested in are the ones showing up here. I think this is a really, really interesting spot. The Spurs, for NBA Cup purposes, need to win this game. They are 7.6, 7 point dogs. So, there is some blowout risk, but I do expect them to play relatively tight rotations here. And Wemby's been playing really big minutes lately outside of NBA Cup stuff. 37 minutes, 36 and a half minutes in his last competitive game, 34 or 35 minutes in a game where he lost a couple minutes to garbage time 2 games ago. Since coming back from the games that he missed, Wemby has played, and again, this, so there was some like garbage time stuff mixed in here, 34, 37, 33, and 37 minutes. Now we have a game that matters. I went to 36 minutes. I've seen him projected for 34, 35 minutes elsewhere. He is center only, which makes it tough to get more of him, but I'm like 2 to 3x the field at 24%. I am getting to him more than Giannis. He looks great to me, just based on, the combination of, one, his fantasy production, but also his playing time clearly being ramped up lately anyway, and then a game that the Spurs need to win. Chris Paul getting 15% ownership at 6K. I got the 13%. He played 34 minutes last game, and you don't have Trey Jones today. Those are both reasons for optimism. I still didn't want to be too aggressive on Chris Paul because it's Chris Paul, and Trey Jones being out doesn't have the same impact since you're getting Sohan back, and Sohan, is a ball handler. You can have a combination of Sohan or Vassell as the backup point guards behind Chris Paul. But I do think you could make a case for like a 31, 32-minute projection on Paul. But even at 30 minutes, I'm getting right around the field. I went 32 on Castle at 5,100. Maybe he loses a couple minutes with guys back, but I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. He has been playing healthy minutes in general for a while, 33, 30, 29, 33, 34. Over his last 5, averaging 32 minutes per game. So I kept that 32-minute projection there. And it does get me quite a bit over the field at 5,100, which I don't have any issues with. And I'm also getting over the field on $5,100 Devin Vassell. This is me kind of guessing here. I went 26 minutes. He hasn't played it yet. It is, I think, an aggressive projection. But this is also somebody that, once he is healthy, is probably playing like 30 minutes a night at least. And so I don't think it's like ultra aggressive. He played 21 minutes in his first game back. He played 24 in his second game back. And if you look, what I kind of did was I looked at how they handled, it was only a 1-game absence for Keldon Johnson, but Keldon Johnson missed a game, played 19, played 22, played 29. Obviously, I'm not going 29 on Vassell here, but you saw him start out at 21, then he got a few minute bump to 24. I just wouldn't be surprised if he got, a couple extra minutes in this game and got to 26. It is getting him into lineups for me at 5,100, which is scary. I'm not super confident in it, but at 5,100, like Vassell could just, pay off 5,100 in 24 minutes anyway. So I'm not super concerned about it. It's not a stand that I hate having. Overall, this season for Vassell, 136 minutes played, 1.13 DraftKings points per minute, 28% usage rate, 24% assist percentage. Like, he's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to have a lot of opportunities when he's on the floor. It's just a matter of, can he get a few more minutes in this game? I'm hoping that he does. I think it seems pretty likely that he will. Keldon Johnson, 4,900. I don't have him, but again, I think he'd be playable too. I went 26 minutes there, but Vassell's the one that is just showing up more often for me. And then wrapping things up on the Phoenix side, Bradley Beal is back. Yusuf Nurkic is still out. Last game without Nurkic, you got a 16-minute start from Mason Plumlee. You got Iguodala playing 30 minutes as his backup off the bench. I projected 18 minutes to Plumlee today. I projected 24 to Iguodala. Beal being back does mean that the Suns can go small a little bit easier. So I went 6 minutes to Kevin Durant at center as well. And still got to a lot of Iguodala. He's $3,800. He's not the best point per minute guy, but 3,800 projected for 15% ownership. I think likely to play, mid-20s in minutes here, one way or the other. Because they can play him alongside Plumlee too. Like, they have done that. So you do have some outs there, but I think it's just more likely that he is the backup center but plays more minutes than Plumlee. There is some chance he actually even just starts over Plumlee. Like, they could do that as well. But either way, with the lack of value we have right now, Iguodala is a piece that I am using quite a bit. 0.74 DraftKings points per minute for the season, but not getting a ton of ownership, which is nice. I'm around the field at 9% on Kevin Durant, 8,600. Played 36 minutes last game. The Suns do need to win this game as well. They probably are screwed one way or the other, but they're definitely out if they lose. So 37 minutes for Durant, I think, is fine. Tyus Jones getting a little bit of love at 5,800. I'm not getting there, but I think it's fine. Obviously, Devin Booker has a high ceiling if you want to play him. So Iguodaro, the word priority, I think, is a little bit too strong because I really couldn't care less if I'm getting to Iguodaro. But right now, he is projecting as a piece to be over the field on for me. I do think that he just projects as a pretty good point per dollar value. Have him projected for 21 DraftKings points at 3,800. And then you just get, kind of the normal guys from the Suns, where if you're playing some Durant, some Tyus Jones, some Devin Booker, you're obviously not going to be upset about it. So that's all for the 8 games on the DraftKings slate. Tank said, price excluded Cade, Barnes, or Maxey. I have the highest projection on Barnes, followed by Cade, followed by, where the hell was Maxey? Followed by Maxey. So yeah, my answer there is Barnes. Yeah. I don't think I missed any other questions. So yeah, to recap, pretty tough slate to find value. Not a ton of injury news that we're waiting on right now either. The NBA Cup games that do matter for both teams are Bucks, Pistons, Magic, Knicks, Spurs, Suns. And then the Thunder have an incentive to win by as many points as possible. The Mavs have an incentive to win the Philly game, the Indiana game, and the Philly game, the Indiana game do not matter. Oh, the Philly game, the Indiana game, and the Cleveland game do not matter, period, for the NBA Cup. So that is how those games look. But yeah, that's how I'm approaching the slate right now. A lot of different ways I think you can go. A lot of just kind of ugly chalk that I have right now and kind of wish I didn't. But should be a pretty fun slate. If you're playing the really big $5 tournament, again, don't be afraid to go off the board, play some lower owned guys. It's really, really tough to beat 79,000 entries. So good luck in whatever you're playing tonight. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button on your way out. And I'll be back here at the same time tomorrow talking about tomorrow's slate. Thanks again for checking out the show, and good luck.